and welcome to the DIY Photo Organising Podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I'm Chantal from Photos in Order.
And I'm Fiona from Photo Helper. Hi, Chantal. How are you?
Hello, Fiona. I'm very good. How are you? I'm really excited.
Good, good. I know, me too. So today we're excited because we're going to bring you some insight into the area of storytelling around your photos. Chantal, I'm excited because I know our listeners obviously love their photos, care about their photos. That's why they they tune into us to get some tidbits on different things. And so today's a real treat, I think. I feel very privileged. So we have a very special guest with us today, and her name is Katie Chambers, and she is from Memories to Legacy. So before we jump in with questions and finding out, Chantal, can you just share a little bit tell us about Katie and what she does? And I think that'll help our listeners understand why we're excited to have Katie as our guest today.
Yeah, I can't wait. So,
Wonderful.
to make it easy, I'll actually read that out because it's a
Good, good,
lot.
good.
Katie, as Fiona mentioned, is a memory keeping writing coach who specialises in helping sentimental moms and grandmas capture personal and family moments that matter, which results in energized, more deeply connected families for generations. So, with her unique approach to family photo story organizing, she has enabled her clients to eliminate photo clutter, to build a collection of mini stories that families love to reminisce around over and over, and to feel fulfilled by leaving a legacy of family memories and connection. So, Katie is a certified teacher of curriculum based on the Turning Memories into Memories program and photo scribe method of the Memoir Life Story Network. She has been facilitating Jottings for generations workshops and also mini retreats for over 10 years, as well as leading online group programs and mentoring private mini story writing clients. So she lives in Kentucky with her husband, and within 30 minutes of their children and 8 grandchildren. She loves stories, drawing, and I'm sure she's going to tell us more about that, in the woods, journaling with God, and mint chocolate chip ice cream. Hi, Katie, and welcome.
Hi, Chantal and Fiona. I'm delighted to be here with you. Thank you for that introduction.
Thank you for being with us. So,
Yeah.
let's start. And Katie, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and how you found yourself in this business of story writing?
Oh, yes. Well, I come from generations of storytellers and family memory keepers on my dad's side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of 10 children, and we would every couple of months drive from uh, North Tennessee, where I grew up, to his hometown in Alabama to visit my grandparents. And when we were there, relatives of his brothers and sisters, a lot of them still lived in the same hometown that they all grew up in. The relatives would all come over, and so you can imagine my grandparents' living room, they called it the sitting room, was full, overflowing with relatives, aunts, uncles, my cousins, and they would sit around after dinner, and I was one of the youngest, so it was my bedtime. I would have to head upstairs and was supposed to be asleep, but I would come down and sit on the stairs and listen to my aunts and uncles, especially, share with each other. They would tell stories, they would be catching up with what they'd been doing recently. They would be singing hymns. They would be praying together. They just had this awesome connection that happened I think even when we were not there, but when we were there and I got to witness it, um, it really did make an impact on me at an early age that sharing story
Mm.
equals family and
Mhm.
equals
Mm.
connection. Um, and then all through my growing up years, my grandparents started this like a newsletter type of thing that
Mm.
they would start, my grandparents would start, and they would write a letter to their children, which would be my dad's generation.
Mhm.
They would
Mm.
just tell them what they'd been doing, then they would put it in an envelope and mail it to the oldest of the children. And then that family would read what my grandparents had written, and then they would write their own letter and put it in to the larger envelope
Oh,
and then
wow.
send it on to the next
Mm.
youngest. And it went around until it got through all of the families, and each person, each family group would add their own news. And
Mm.
then when it got back to my grandparents, they would take out their first letter and put in now their most current news. So this sharing of story continued through letters.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
And I still have some of those. And so I still have some of my ancestors' handwriting after all these years. And now my children and grandchildren are getting a glimpse of what life was like
Mm.
then. And they can see that their ancestors were real people that they might have liked to have known.
Yeah.
So along the way,
Wow.
I've done my own versions of journaling and scrapbooking, but when I scrapbook, it's without much embellishment. It's
Mhm.
more a collage of my thoughts and my feelings and my experiences.
Mhm.
About what really ignited my passion to capture family mini stories was when my husband and I were empty nesters. We moved back to Tennessee, where I grew up, about 15 years ago,
Mm.
and I got to spend time with my mom, my elderly mom. She was in her late 80s,
Mm.
and she and I would sit on her couch in her little apartment and look at her photo albums.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
as many of your listeners may have done too with their moms or grandmas, just hearing her share about who some of these people I had no idea who they were, of course.
Mm.
And as she started telling about who they were and then what her connection was to them or
Mm.
not, I would start asking her questions and she would find herself going off on what she called off on a tangent. And
Mhm.
she would be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I got off the subject." And I was like,
Well,
"That's
that's some
okay,
of the
go
best
for it."
stuff, though. Yeah,
That's
that's
the
some of the best
juicy
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's the that's the stuff I want to hear.
They're the
And
gold nuggets. Yep. Yep.
that's right. And as she started sharing more openly, I decided, you know what? There's a lot of stuff here that I want to remember. So I brought an old fashioned, I mean, back then it was an old tape recorder
Mhm.
with cassette tapes, and I held a handheld microphone in her face, and then and then I would bring it to my face to ask the questions, and then
Mm.
um, so I've recorded,
Yeah.
oh gee, almost a year's worth of stories from my mom, and then I started jotting them
Oh,
down and
wow.
made little booklets and shared them with my family,
Yeah.
and then I
So can I
realized,
just ask you? Can I ask you a
yeah.
quick question there, Katie? When you were doing that with your mum, were you what was sort of sparking those memories? Like, did you have sort of photos that you were flicking through, or did sort of one story lead to another, and then it was just like a conversation, or what was sort of the triggers for those memories?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was both. It started with just her photos in photo albums.
Mm.
And it would be photos of her family, which I did not know her mom and dad um, at all, and so to learn about them was interesting. And then just as she started talking about her relatives, um, I just was inquisitive about what she was feeling or
Mm.
how that made a difference to her or what I guess it's just my curiosity. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
always wanting to know more of the story than people are usually saying out loud.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and she was willing to go there with me. I don't think either of us realized what we were doing at the time.
Mm.
It just
Mm.
became a natural kind of following the flow of her memories
Mm.
and going where she was wanting to talk.
Mm.
But what was so neat about it was that I got to know her as more than my mom. You know, I got to know her as a real
Mm.
person,
Yeah.
as a child, as a young adult,
Wow.
Mm.
before she knew my dad. And she shared things with me that, I mean, I was like 40 something at the time.
Mm.
And so she shared things with me that I had no idea about. Um, her
Mm.
fears, her concerns, her wishes and dreams for me, my brother and my sister,
Mm.
um, what she felt about being still there with us and was able to be a great grandma, and
Mm.
just different
Mm.
different emotional things that you wouldn't necessarily think could come out of looking at photos, but when you
Right. And
allow
so is that where the so was it sort of from that experience then that the sort of the birth of the business or helping others do this came in?
yes. Yes, because
Ah.
when mom and I were looking at her photo albums, we we ended up taking them to the craft room that
Mm.
was in this retirement community where she lived, and so we could spread them out more.
Mm.
And so we were doing the recording there and doing the talking there. And so some of the other seniors in the community would come over and say, "What are you guys doing? What are you doing?" And so I told
Ah.
them what we were doing, and some of them were so interested, and they were like,
Mm.
"Oh, I wish I could do that with my daughter. I would like to do that with my granddaughter."
Mm.
And I said, "Well, why don't you invite them to come, and I'll do this with you guys." And so it started that
Mm.
way as just a
Mm.
service for the retirement community,
Mm.
and then it just kind of grew from there, and it became so important to me to help capture these family memories because it just breaks my heart that so
Mm.
many
Yeah.
personal and family stories are being lost.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I
And that
realized
was
that
one of the yeah.
yeah, I had almost
You had
waited
almost
too
got, sorry.
long. Yeah.
Mm.
Right. Well, that's what we were going to ask. What are some of the reasons why, like from your experience, just doing that with your mum and then some of the other people, and obviously now into a business, what are some of the reasons or the benefits and the sort of flow on effect of that um, as to why, you would really encourage others to do the same type of thing?
Yeah, it's so important to leave this legacy of memories because, so many of us think, well, we'll always remember the details,
Mm.
the highlights of our life. I mean, how could we forget? Because we've got all these photos, right? All
Mhm.
the photos that
Mm,
we've taken through the years that we take them to help us recall
Mm.
where we went, what we did, who was there, how we experienced our life. But time flits by and memories fade, and
Mm.
our photos are really only capturing part of the story. So I just, my passion, I just love to hear and relive and capture and share the rest of the story.
Mm.
And so we do that when we tell the stories, but it but sometimes the stories just stop being told, and
Mm.
so but when we actually jot the juicy behind the scenes snippets of our life down, it does create this legacy of memories that can last long after we're gone.
Mm.
And some of the reasons that that's important is or the or how it does this important work is because it goes beyond just documenting
Mhm.
facts. Like, some of us are more genealogically focused. We want to capture
Mm.
the dates and the names and the places. And
Mhm.
then some of us are more, um, I would say, feelings or emotion
Mm.
focused. And that's
Mhm.
me,
Mhm.
if you can't tell.
Mm.
um, um,
Mhm.
by by leaving this legacy of memories, it gives the family members, especially the one writing, but it gives all of
Mm.
the family a deeper sense of
Yes.
identity.
Yes.
Like they
Mm.
can each be seen and known for it gives a real authentic view
Mm.
of what's been making you who you truly are and your
Mm.
family who it truly
Mm.
is.
Mhm.
Because by
Yeah.
putting the words, those
Yes.
words that go with the photos, bring the personality and your unique way of experiencing things to life
Mm.
for those who will read it later.
Mhm.
And then it's all
Mm.
also just such a feeling of fulfillment for
Mm.
the
Mm.
writer
Mhm.
because then you've known that you've created something lasting for your
Mm.
family
Yeah.
that's written from your heart, expresses
Mhm.
your
Exactly.
love for them, and you can
Mm.
feel like you've really made a difference
Yes.
for your
Yeah.
family.
Yeah, it is leaving a legacy of memories. It really is. Yeah.
Mm.
And I like
Mm.
how you said, and I have to disclose something here. Katie is offering a course, and she'll talk about that later. But I've actually done that with her, and I've learned so
Yeah.
much. And I was one of these writers, as you just mentioned. Very factual. Who is it? Where was it? When was it? Why were we there? But not much deeper, really. And I'm so grateful you have taught me how to put more into the stories of myself and how I felt at the time, or thoughts or things that go much deeper, obviously, than just the location and the event. And
Mm.
yeah, it's fascinating, and it does make a difference. And I believe as well
Mm.
that photos connect people, but the story, it connects on a much deeper level. I find.
When you
Um,
include those things, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we were wondering, like, in terms of photos, we keep saying, okay, you've got the photos, you write down a story that goes with it. Does it always go together, or how big is the role of photos in what you do?
Yeah, I think photos can play maybe I kind of look at them as three different aspects of helping the story to come alive. Um, Photos are for sure a springboard
Mhm.
from which the memories start to flow, like with my mom, where she was
Mhm.
looking at the photos and that started memories to flow. And then we followed the memories to the next one and to the
Mhm.
next one. And that leads to the real heart of the story, uncovering what it is that you really want to capture. And it may end up being a mini story that has nothing to do with the initial photo
Mhm.
Mm.
that you started from. It's just
Mhm.
so much fun to see where the meandering takes you.
Mhm.
Um, Perhaps a second way that photos are useful is if you have stories that you know you want to capture, but you don't have photos
Mhm.
of that experience. Um, for example, I have a story that I wanted to share with my grandkids about how my confidence grew through a tumbling class that I
Mm.
took in Mrs. Toohey's basement dance studio.
Right.
But I didn't have any photos of that.
Mm.
I didn't have photos of Mrs. Toohey. I didn't have photos of anything related to it. But my granddaughters, two of my granddaughters, um, when they were 6 and 8, were taking dance lessons and they had some dance recitals going on. And I
Mm.
took photos of them at that time. So when I didn't know I was going to want to write the story about my tumbling class,
Mm.
but I had these photos. And so when I did uncover that I wanted to capture the tumbling experience, I thought, I'll look through the photos I have and see if anything jumps out at me. And boom, there were my granddaughter's
Mm.
dance photos. And so I used some of them with my story. And then I ended up putting some of their story in too. And it became a
Mhm.
multi generational mini story.
Wow.
So
Mm.
that was fun to do.
Mm,
Mhm. Mhm.
And then a third way that photos can be used is when you don't have a photo that you started with, you don't have photos that are of a similar experience, and so you're telling the story and you have these emotions and this overall feeling that you want to convey in your story.
Mhm.
Perhaps some photos could be added, um, just photos that you have of your favorite nature scenes,
Mhm.
like blue
Mhm.
sky with puffy white clouds, or if there's
right.
like a feeling of freedom that you wanted to include,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
even stock photos can be helpful,
Mm.
um, of family groupings or amusement parks or
Mhm.
food, something that you want to add to your story and to
Mhm.
either photos that you do have, or if you just don't have any at all,
Mm.
they can also be
Mm,
used. So to me, photos are an integral part of
Mm.
having a
of that
a
story.
really a really great mini story collection. Yes.
Mm.
So, Katie, when so if we've got people listening and say they've sort of pictured a few photos, so as you're talking, I'm sure it's quite common for people to sort of think of an experience or think of a photo that might fall in, those three categories or something. What would you say, or if you can just help talk us through some of the tips and just sort of a bit of a framework of sort of what to do. I'm sure people sort of may assume that there's a lot of time that's involved to sort of sit down and write stories. So I guess that's a question: is this a very time-consuming task, or is it easier than maybe someone like myself might think in their mind? They've got to block out all these big chunks of time and sit and sweat it out until I get that story done or something. Or just some tips. So if you can just sort of talk us through the process a little bit. Do people sort of
Sure.
sit down with a pen and paper? Can they jump on the software, or inspiration around how to actually go about doing this?
Sure. Yes. Well, yeah, you touched on the nugget, which is we think that we'll get around to doing this someday, but we keep putting it off for usually three reasons are what people tell me. One is because we think it'll take too long.
Mm.
Another is we don't think we have what it takes to do it because we don't really know how to get started and then how to keep going once we get started. So,
Hmm.
yeah, most people think that preserving family memories this way is, or really taking a step back, people think that they have to preserve family memories by writing an entire, like, chronological family story,
Mhm.
and that it's this big thing. It's this, like, big, uh, never ending kind
Like
of.
the memoirs.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Like
Yeah.
a life story, like it's my whole life, and I have to start in the beginning, and I have to include all the stuff till now. And how am I ever going to do that? Because,
Mm.
Mm.
or of my parents, or of my whoever I'm wanting to write about. But the truth is that I feel that capturing just snippets of life, these little bits of our life,
Mhm.
even as they're happening, and then flow from one memory to another as those memories arise, and then there's the content, the beginning for the next one, the next mini story. It's almost like they emerge.
Mhm.
They really emerge,
Mm.
and I love to help people uncover what those are for now. And then you just capture one and then capture another. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be chronological. It doesn't have to be all about you at a certain period of your life. You can jump around
Mhm.
and you can create this interesting to read legacy of family stories. You just have to be willing to write like you're talking with them. And you're just sitting around on the couch and you're just reminiscing. You're just
Mm.
telling them,
Mm.
telling the story. If we can just write it like we would tell it instead
Mhm.
of being
Mhm.
concerned, we get all concerned that we have to be a writer. We have to know how to
Right.
scrapbook. We have to have researched family history. We have to have a bunch of photos to
Mm.
include that go with the story. No, we don't. We don't have to have really
Mm.
any of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And this is really the non negotiable part of my business. I only teach techniques that are simple, where the tasks are not too time consuming. They can
Mhm.
actually be broken down into blocks of about 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
the overall strategy is one of fun and ease.
Mm.
So the only things that you would need to get started are some supplies, like some pens, notebook paper, a 3-ring binder, then photos, either a stack of photos, an album of photos, or even photos you already have in a scrapbook, but maybe there's not much story included yet.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then if you have your digital photos on your cell phone, your computer, wherever you're storing those, that's all you need. And
Mm.
to then to catch the memories as they start flowing, you could also
Mm.
have um, the voice recorder on your cell phone comes
Mhm.
in handy,
Yep.
Mhm.
and having maybe some index cards, some note cards, or a small spiral notebook is another way to then, when these memories start to flow, you want to be sure that you can
Mm.
jot yourself a little bit of uh, it's almost like a hashtag, just the time when
Yeah.
I blank, blank, blank. Just write it down
Mm.
somewhere so you don't lose the thought.
Mm.
And then the
Mm.
rest comes through just being guided or mentored, story coached to uncover what you truly want to capture, and then to create a customized workflow that will work for you long term.
Mm.
So that's it's really
Mm.
so much more simple than people would expect.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and I think
But
that's,
yep.
yeah.
I like that there's I mean, I'm a sort of a process driven girl. So I like the sort of the structure to the fluidity of that. So you're able to be spontaneous and have the thought and capture it somewhere, but being able to then have a bit of a process to produce something at the end, which is
Mm.
the goal, to really be
Yes.
able to have captured that information to pass on and share with others, um, still involves. a process,
Mm.
something that you
Yeah,
can repeatable steps, because there's obviously other
repeatable.
memories that will
Correct.
continue to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm.
Correct. And
Not just have all
that's
these
what I teach.
hashtags and yeah, yep,
Oh
that's what
yeah,
you teach. You're
for
saying,
sure.
sorry? Yep.
Yes, that's what I teach in my 4-week group program. Capture your moments,
Mm-hmm.
jotting mini stories behind family photos with ease, and it
Hmm.
is totally that. It's a 4-week uh, process where you learn this framework, um, where you go from choosing, you prioritize your story jotting goals, and I have a process called the Moments That Matter sorting system,
Mm-hmm.
and you learn how to sort your photos, memories, and then lead to your stories.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
second week, we learn how to uncover the heart of the story with the memory mapping process. I think
Mm.
that might have been one of Chantel's favorites. We
I
left
was
our
just gonna
memory
say,
mapping, didn't we?
I love it. This is so good.
Oh,
Yeah,
joy.
and I can confirm with Katie's guidance, it really is with ease. Everyone can do that. It's yeah,
Mm. So the mapping on week 2,
yeah.
can you share with us a bit about week
The,
3 and 4 as well?
yes, uh-huh. So the memory mapping does provide this general structure, so you're always be
Mhm.
uncovering what really matters to you right now.
Mm.
And then week 3 is about expressing your personal essence and family uniqueness, um,
Mm.
so that you can create stories that are interesting to read and fun and fulfilling for you to write. And I have these photo scribing writing techniques that add personality, conversation, setting, character, that
Mm.
where we can jazz up the story a little bit if need be, just so it makes sense, it flows, it's concise where it needs to be, it's expressive where it needs to be. So when people hesitate to get started with their family stories because they think, but I'm not a writer,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to write,
Mm.
then this week really helps with that. It helps
Yeah,
to again let you know that just saying it the way that you would talk it out,
Mm.
and then we can learn to tweak that and edit it a little bit with these photo
great.
scribing writing techniques. And then week 4 is about, okay, so now what do I do with these mini stories now that I've
Mm.
started jotting them down? So
Mm.
this week is all about preserving, about collecting and storing your first mini stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you add to them, what do you do? And then options for preserving the the collection once you get to that. Once you have jotted down several mini stories and you've worked out the order that you might want them to be in a more
Mm-hmm.
permanent form, then there's so many options, of course, um, of how you can preserve them in photo books through
Mm-hmm.
Shutterfly,
Yep.
Memento,
Mm.
Simple Prints on an online
Mm.
app,
Mm.
and collage is another. But some people like to, for sure, as they're collecting them before they're ready to put them into a permanent form, they like to use the 3-ring binder because then you can move the pages around. You can print out if
Mm-hmm.
you're liking to type your stories in a document on your computer,
Yep.
then you can print them out and put them into the binder.
Mm.
Um, you can download your photos from your computer, add that to the binder. Some people like to use an archival quality scrapbook album that just is a blank, an empty album, and then You can use plastic sleeves that
Mhm.
have that are of different sizes, so you can put your photos that are of different sizes. You may have
Oh, yeah, yeah.
horizontal views
Mhm.
or
Yep.
vertical views, and you can put your photos into those sleeves. You can put your whole story, if it's a one page, a half a page, couple of pages, whatever, um, into the into that kind of a
Mm.
sleeve as well.
Yep.
Um,
Mm.
but being able to move the stories around, Chantal, I think you found that that was something you might find
Yes.
helpful for you.
Yes. Because
Yep.
as like I said before, so far I was like more of a factual sort of person, and chronological is
Mhm.
always my thing. But with the stories, it became clear quickly that I was able to actually let go of that, and with the binder, it does help that you have these mini stories, and you can simply move them around in all sorts of groupings. So I found that that's a really really great tip, and it helped me a lot. Yes. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
it's also important to remember that we don't have to wait to
Mm.
share these mini stories with our family until they're all hard copy preserved.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we can share these from within the binder. We
Mm.
can take one page out and share and show the photos.
Mm.
It's I feel like we're creating this ongoing, like, living
Mm-hmm.
legacy
Mm-hmm.
of memory and
Mm.
connection. So
Mm.
we don't need to wait,
Mm.
because when we wait to share, then again, we're
Mm.
just putting off this wonderful
Yes.
reminiscing
Yeah.
right now that we can be doing with our
Yeah.
families,
Mm-hmm.
and the connection we
Mm.
can be building with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think too, just like when you first started sharing with us, you were telling us about the story of when you were sitting at the top of the stairs, and the stories and the sharing that the family were doing when they gathered. The more you share that story, it just cements the richness of that, and it almost takes a life of its own, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's then
Hmm.
a shared memory with those others that are being privileged to be involved in that storytelling, and then they sort of take on that. It's like your grandchildren say with your tumbling class.
Mm.
um, it comes to life for them as well.
Mm.
Hmm.
It's not just they're not just sort of subjectively sitting there watching, that person or whatever. It's really a an involvement that they sort of get involved in that. So yeah, like you're saying, if you share them early, the more you share them again, and you reminisce about that story in a different way. Um, and it really just cements that as a part of the family culture, that feeling of that family unity that you have the ability to create through these stories.
Mm.
Hmm. Oh, that is so true. My grandchildren have heard that story so many times now that when we when we go up their stairs or down their stairs at their house, especially the ones into the basement, my youngest grandson um, says, "Hey, Grandma, are we going to go down the story stairs now?" Because we call those stairs at my grandparents the story stairs.
Yeah.
And so he'll say, "Are we
Oh,
going down the story stairs? And can you tell me some more stories when we get
Oh.
there?"
oh,
Also, there
it's
was a
so
client of
cute.
mine, it just reminded me. There was a client of mine that they were empty nesters, and they, so their college age, they had two
Hmm.
boys, their college age kids um, ended up, like, they were feeling so connected because their mom and their grandma had been collecting stories for them as they were growing
Mm.
up. And now, as young adults, they just had this deep sense of belonging within
Mhm.
their family, this
Mm,
this firm
mm,
foundation.
Mhm.
And now they'll pass that on by reminiscing with their future children about
Mhm.
that too. So, yes, it's just this connection that continues through
Mhm.
generations.
yeah.
We're
And they don't tire of it, do they? It's like, tell us the story of, and how many
yeah.
times they've heard it, but it still does. I mean, we all know, I'm sure we can all remember certain memories like that. And I guess,
Mm.
um, the big takeaway for me in this, the pleasure of having this conversation with you, the big takeaway for me is, while we say, tell me that story, I really encourage everyone listening to capture that, capture those ones that you hear the kids or the grandkids or yourself saying. Tell us that story again of how you first met, or of that time on the bike, or the camping trips
Mm.
you always go on, or I'm sure that people think, and I'm sure, Katie, you've come across every time you do courses like this and different things. It, is it quick for people to say, yes, these memories, they're sort of floating around up there, waiting to be captured?
I think they start. I think we each have some that are in our mind that if someone guided us to say, okay, so now what, and that's how I started with Chantal, was what are the top of mind memories, the moments that you have in your
Mm,
mind that you already know you would like to capture.
Mm.
So we get those
right.
down, but then we do with the moments that matter sorting system and the memory mapping process. We just, Chantel was like, oh my gosh, we've opened the floodgates,
Yes.
because all of a sudden, all these all these memories just start coming from this, the memory
Wow.
mapping especially
yeah.
just opens up all of these
Fabulous.
other things. And where Chantel was saying, I don't know that I have that many memories, of some stuff.
Mm.
But
Mm,
it turned out that we do. we
Yes.
we
yes.
we have, yes. And so
Oh.
then it becomes the fun process of determining, okay, so which ones,
Mm.
what does my heart feel drawn toward? What does my heart feel
Mm,
like I really want to write down about right now?
Mm.
And I can
right.
do those
Mm.
first and then see what happens next.
Mm.
So,
Wonderful.
but you know what? Right
Well,
now,
yeah,
with
yeah.
with, with COVID, this
Mm,
there's no
Mm.
better time than now to start doing this, because
Yeah.
mm,
this pandemic year has shown us that connection, especially
Mm.
with family, is so
oh
important to
yeah.
our well-being and to carrying on our
Mm-hmm.
traditions.
Mm. Mm.
So, by jotting these mini stories down,
Mm.
we're just making a long-lasting difference in our families. So, yeah,
Mm.
so just like Nike
Yeah.
says, just do it. I would just say, just jot it. Just jot
yes.
it.
Just jot it.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
Katie, if our listeners would like to learn more about how you work and what you're offering, we've mentioned the course a few times, which I can highly recommend.
Thank
So,
you.
can you share with them how they can find you and yeah, how you can help them? And we'll, of course, put all the links in the show notes. But yeah, if you
Mhm.
want to share with them, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. Sure. Um, well, my website is Memories to Legacy. That's MEMORIES, Memories to
Mm-hmm.
Legacy.com. And then I have a private Facebook group
Mm-hmm.
of sentimental memory keeping moms and grandmas that's on Facebook, and it's called Story Jotters. Story Jotters, Jotters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I would love to, if my next 4 week group program, let's see, be starting February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone is interested in learning more about that, you'll have that link in the notes. And if they
Yep.
want to email me
Mm-hmm.
at katie@memoriestolegacy.com and
Mhm.
mention the podcast, then they will receive early bird pricing of
Mm.
$100 off that program. I would love to have any of your listeners join us for that. And then I have two
Wonderful.
Awesome.
more
Okay.
gifts I would like to give them.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a PDF guide I have that's called Three Simple Steps. Start your family mini story collection.
Mm-hmm.
And this will just give you the first 3 steps that you can start with to get going with this. That will be in the show notes. And if you'd like
Yep.
to have a complimentary Zoom session with me, we can chat about how to um, really focus in on what's important to you in your memory keeping and
Mm.
how to jumpstart your story jotting. So I'd love to share any of those with your listeners.
Oh, fabulous.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Very generous of you. Thank you.
Thank you guys
That's
so
lovely.
much. This,
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you, Katie. I've already got thoughts in my mind. I might have to do a few hashtag jot down some top of mind
yes.
things. And then I'm fascinated about the delving into the mapping part of that
Mm.
even more, just to see the floodgates open, as you say, Chantal.
It really did.
Yeah, it's great. And
Yeah.
you know, as photo
Well,
organizers, we obviously love our photos, and we love what that brings, and it is the memories. And so I think
Yes.
this is such a beautiful natural connection and extension on from that.
Yeah.
And I love the way you've gone through, Katie, just how it doesn't have to be, I don't have that photo of that event, you know, just to use the photos in
Mm.
different ways as well. Yeah, really
mhm.
inspirational. Thank you.
Oh, thank you
Thank
both
you.
very much. It was a pleasure to be here and to share with your listeners today. I always love encouraging as many moms and
Mm.
grandmas out there, women of all ages,
Mm.
to start jotting down your stories and connecting them with your photos.
Mm.
So,
We are a people of
Mm.
stories, right?
yes.
Yeah.
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 Thanks so much for being
Good.
here today, Katie. We really, really appreciate, and I'm sure
Thank
our
you.
listeners do the same. And hopefully, you'll get a few new people in the group and the course. Again, I can't recommend it enough. I've learned so much, and I can't wait to write more. I keep telling people it's like I found the missing twin because in photo organizing, I find it's very technical. Especially because I specialize in digital photo organizing, it gets very techy very quickly and very
Yeah.
complex. But that's only one part of the story to manage the photos, and the other one is the storytelling. That's a totally different part, but it goes hand in hand, and that's it's like the missing twin because they need to be together to make it
Oh,
more,
that's
you
so
know, to
good.
make the photos
Yes.
richer.
Yeah.
Because as you said,
Mm.
along the way, the photos without the stories, they don't tell us that much actually. When you think about it,
Mm.
It's,
so
yes.
yeah,
Oh, that's
yes,
beautifully
I love what
said.
you do.
Yes. Oh, thank you
So,
guys. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. And as always, all the links are in the show notes, and you're very welcome to leave a review or to send us some feedback or ask you questions. If you've got questions about the storytelling, Katie shared her email address. You can get in touch with her, and otherwise, you'll find us on our social media channels, and we'll be there for you. And yeah, that was it for today. So I'm Chantal from Photos in Order.
And I'm Fiona from Photo Helper. So thanks for being here. Thanks again, Katie. And happy photo organizing to all, and also happy story jotting.
Yeah.
Thanks again, and bye for now. Thanks, Katie. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.